Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Manny here once again. Welcome back to DFS Zone. I got a brand new video for you guys today. Today we're going to discuss Week 3's best possible quarterback plays for us here as a community at DFS Zone. And before I get started, I appreciate you guys smash that like button. Let's try to get 50 or more likes on this video as I'm really trying to build the channel up. And of course, that also tells me if you definitely appreciate what I've been able to do to help you guys out as much as I can as far as giving you information on a daily basis as well as on a weekly basis with NFL. We're going to go into the NBA very shortly. Another month from now, we'll be doing videos every day and information you're going to get pretty much for free every single day as far as giving you the best possible advice, best lineup situations for you on a regular basis. So smash that like button again. Let's get 50 or more. And if you're new to the channel, you have never been here before, please do subscribe down below. If you feel this content is going to help you and you want to be able to get it on a regular basis, you must subscribe. And at the same time, you must also put on your post notifications, because if not, you're not going to get the videos right away and you don't want to miss out on that. I do have a live show for the NFL every week. It's every Saturday at 7 p.m. We run it for about an hour and a half. I definitely would love you guys to join me. We'll discuss games strategies, tips, tricks. We'll go over the game stacks, team stacks. We'll go over the players that I will be discussing throughout the week. This week, as far as the best possible plays, if there's any changes in that, if there's any injury reports as the week progresses, as far as injury reports with practices Wednesday, Thursday, we'll be able to have a really good idea Saturday night on where we at. So again, must subscribe down below and put on those notifications. This way you do not miss any uploads or live shows. All right, with that all being said, we do have a massive large slate, and I am going to discuss only the quarterbacks on this video. I will be back. There will be a running back video later on. There will be one for the receivers as well as the tight ends, and the tight end one will be more than likely locked in with the defenses for the week. And then of course we will have the live show on Saturday to discuss everything all over again. All right, as far as this slate here, man, I do have my DraftKings and FanDuel. These players are all, I one thing's for sure, as you guys already know, after 2 weeks, I give you options. You're going to get a couple of plays. You're not going to get just one play or two plays per position. I'm going to give you 3, possibly 4 on average. And then, of course, I'm always going to have those little sneaky possible plays. I do have about 4 quarterbacks I like here, but overall there's about 6 or 7 that might be really intriguing this week. So I'm going to definitely touch base on a few of those as well as the top that I like. I'm always going to try to give you a possible play in the top tier, like one of the stud quarterbacks, as well as a mid tier and maybe possibly even a value play almost every week. This week, I really believe, to be totally honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I think there's a possibility for us to be able to pay up for a quarterback this week, because there's a lot of quarterbacks in very favorable positions this week as far as who their opponents are. And then, of course, I think we can actually pay down a little bit at running back and still get value. And I think that definitely this week we can really pay up as far as in the receivers. But then, this is all my opinion. You know, nothing is guaranteed, as we all know. I'm going to discuss that all the time. I'm going to always say that we're not guaranteed anything with DFS as well as these games. If you're betting on the game lines or whatever the case may be, nothing is guaranteed, no matter what anybody says, as far as you winning. It's about being a consistent winner and finding ways to be a little more consistent on a weekly basis. And obviously you want to get as much information as you can and be able to, you know, narrow that down and make some decisions. But I'm going to always give you a number of plays simply because there are people that play on FanDuel as well as DraftKings like I do. So I'll be sharing those numbers with you as we go. So I'll be in the top at quarterback this week. There's a couple of studs that are really intriguing. Obviously, I'm going to speak to you about Patrick Mahomes. I did give you guys Mahomes last week. I'm sure a number of people on the internet were with me on that as well. I think this week is probably going to be the same thing again. I mean, the kid is just playing well. Week 1, I told you guys I wasn't going to be on him because I wanted to see how well he played after a game or two. Well, he convinced me after game 1. That's why I played him last week in some of my lineups. I am planning to play and have him in some of my lineups again this week. So Patrick Mahomes is definitely a player. 8,900. He's pretty expensive here on FanDuel, which is quite all right, even though there's a number of nice plays right behind him. On DraftKings, he's obviously priced also as the second top tier quarterback this week at 7,000, but 7,000 looks a lot nicer than 8,900. So if you are more of a DK player, I think he's a fine play there on DK as well as here on FanDuel as far as the top quarterback. 8,900 and 7,000 respectively. I mean, this kid last week put up 38 here at FanDuel points. 38 if this window will open. 38 last week, 38.8 fantasy points, 23 of 28, 326 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had also 5 rushes for 18 yards. He did cough up the ball one time, but he's been fantastic, man. The course of this year, what he's done on average is 33.5, pretty much 33.5 fantasy points right here between these two games. He has right now. He's showing tremendous upside for the price, and nobody's been able to stop him. He has not thrown an interception yet in 2 games and 10 touchdowns. So until I see somebody neutralize him and put this kid in a position where he is not going to put up these kind of numbers, you obviously got to favor him in every possible matchup that he is in. And he just finished facing 2 of the more offensive-minded teams, and now he's got to go out and just face San Francisco. I just think this is a tough matchup for San Francisco, even though San Francisco has played a couple good teams. But in the red zone, the kid is 8 of 11 so far this year, 72% completion percentage with the 6 TDs, of course. Inside the 10, 4 of 6, 66.6% completion percentage with 10 yards throwing and 4 touchdowns. And again, 0 interceptions. When you have the weapons that he has himself, which is a weapon, Hunt, Hill, Kelsey, and then on top of that, he still has also Sammy Watkins and Mr. Connolly as well in the receiving. So he has a lot of weapons he can go to. He's able to move around the pocket. He can beat you with his feet. Like I said at week 1, I love dual threat quarterbacks, and you're gonna always hear from me here at DFS Zone. I'm always gonna favor. I'm gonna be always a little partial to the dual threat quarterbacks because of those reasons. But I'm only gonna give them to you if I feel that they are in a favorable matchup, and I think Mahomes is in a good matchup here. San Francisco, not a bad team, man, but they're just not enough here defensively. 25th after 2 games so far this season, they're 25th in defense this year. They've given up 278 yards per game on average, and that was towards Minnesota and Detroit. Minnesota, granted, got a lot of weapons as well, very explosive offense as well with Cook in the backfield. You still got Thielen to deal with, Diggs in the freaking damn flats, really has the speed. And then you got also the tight end there and Rudolph as well. So just almost similar to the type of team that he's going to play San Francisco is going to face this week with Patrick Mahomes. But I think this team is a little bit more explosive with their options, as well as, like I mentioned, they still have Sammy Watkins and Connolly. He has a lot of weapons. I love Patrick Mahomes here against San Francisco. San Francisco's defense thus far this year against quarterbacks, they've given up 591 yards and 5 touchdowns. 5 rushes to quarterbacks. They have rushed 5 times with 34 yards on the ground against San Francisco. And on top of that, the DK points have been really, really high. DK points 24.5 and FanDuel points 22.5, 2 quarterbacks so far over the course of 2 games. So those numbers are enough to intrigue me even more that Patrick Mahomes and company are in a good position here to put up some good points against San Francisco. In the red zone in 2 games, San Francisco, 50% of their opponents have scored in the red zone. Okay, Kansas City has been in the red zone as an offense 3 times, and all 3 times they have scored a touchdown. So definitely those odds don't look too good for San Francisco. So again, my first guy here that I think we all should be on, and he's going to probably be fairly highly owned this year, this week, possibly 40% or better this week, just simply because he has been lights out until somebody neutralizes him. We got to ride the ship with a kid like Patrick Mahomes. He's in a favorable matchup. Definitely Patrick Mahomes in play. Again, these guys all, like I said this week, I think everyone here is in favorable matchups. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, probably one of the best quarterbacks ever in this league. He moves his feet well. He's going up against Washington. I think he's in a good spot. Kirk Cousins against Buffalo with that dreadful team. Granted, Buffalo did play better last week, but they have not yet to face an offense like the weapons that Kirk Cousins has and what he's capable of doing. So this is definitely a tough game for Buffalo. And then, of course, they also have to go into Minnesota, where the Vikings are usually very good at home. Drew Brees, good spot as well. Going into a dome against Atlanta is another good spot. A little tough. He's had some times where Atlanta's done well against him, and there's been times that he has done well against Atlanta. So, but I think he's still in a favorable spot. Cam Newton, I really like him here against Cincinnati, but Cincinnati, as a defense, thus far after 2 games, they're one of the top teams as far as defensively, defending against the pass. So, but Cam with his feet, he can beat you there as well. Granted, Cincinnati did, even though they're fairly good at passing, they have given up 23 points per game to 2 teams in a row. and that was against both Baltimore and Indianapolis. And I could see Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers doing a lot better than those two teams, especially that they're playing at home. So he may be someone to consider as well. Russell Wilson also in a good spot at home against Dallas. I think Russell has, could do some damage here. Matt Ryan, same thing. But my next guy I'm going to discuss is the ones under 8,000. Obviously, Russell Wilson is a good pick. Matt Ryan is a good one as well. I really like Deshaun Watson here. Again, I chose him last week. I'm going to go with him again. Again, I love these dual threat quarterbacks. I know he's facing the Giants. The Giants have been pretty decent defensively this year, but they have not faced Deshaun Watson and the receivers that this guy has in his arsenal with Hopkins and Fuller. I think it's going to be a tough go for them. And then not only that, the running back is also someone that you got to consider here as well. But Deshaun Watson with his feet, I think he's in a great spot, man. So far this season, 39 of 66, 59% completion percentage, 3 TDs, 2 interceptions. Last week, obviously, was his best game, 22 of 32 versus Tennessee. Threw for over 300 yards, 310 yards to be exact, 2 TDs and an interception. Did rush 5 times for 44 yards. He put up 23.8 fantasy points, okay, 23.8, and that brings his average to 17.9 after that dreadful first week. I think he's going to be good to go from here on in. He has a lot of upside. We've seen it last year, especially with his feet. The Giants so far, like I said, they've been okay. In the red zone, before I get ahead of myself, in the red zone, Deshaun, 3 of 9, not very small sample, 2 games, hasn't been there quite a bit, but 3 out of 9, 26 yards, 1 touchdown. He has rushed 3 times for 11 yards, also in the red zone. Inside the 10-yard line, 2 of 4, 12 yards, 1 TD, and he has rushed 2 times for 4 yards. Hasn't gotten in the end zone from the red zone. They have had their issues in the red zone a little bit, the Houston Texans. I hope that they rectify that this week against the Giants. They're going up against the Giants. Like I said before, the Giants have been pretty good thus far, defending against the pass. They're the second best after 2 weeks, only giving up 164 yards per game, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. They're also in, on the flip side, as far as rushing quarterbacks, they have given the second most amount of yards to a rushing quarterback this year. Behind Pittsburgh, they have given up 11 rushes. The quarterbacks have rushed on them 11 times for 87 yards. That's pretty big, about 8.5 yards per carry. In the red zone, both teams have had their troubles, like I mentioned, the Giants as well as the Texans. So something's got to give this week. Somebody's going to cough it up. It could be the Giants. It could be Houston. I'm just banking on Deshaun Watson here with his talents. I think that he's going to be in a good spot here as far as being able to move around a little bit in the pocket. And you know him, he gets a little bit of room, he's going to take off. And he's got great feet, and he runs well, and he throws well on the run as well. But I think here what I'm thinking is, my whole logic is the Giants have not faced 2 good receivers, Fuller and Hopkins. Both of them last week had 11 and I think 9, 10 targets apiece. I mean, I can check it real quick here. Hopkins, I believe he had 11 or 12 targets. He had 11 targets last week, 11 targets for 2 weeks in a row. So I'm going to pair him up with the wide receivers video later on. And then on top of that, his buddy Fuller played his first game last week, and he had 9 targets. He had 8 receptions. So, it's just a matter of time. Now Fuller is finally in. He didn't play for game 1. So you got Fuller now, and now you got also your other target, Hopkins. He's in a good spot, man. I definitely love Deshaun Watson here. So definitely have a consideration for Mr. Watson. My next guy that I'm looking at, now like I said before, I'm trying to find players that are good plays in different tiers. So in the 7,000 range, those are the guys that I like. Obviously, I love Carson Wentz, but obviously I got to wait for him to come back, play a game or 2, and see how he does. So he may be someone we may target down the line depending on matchups. Jimmy Garoppolo, Andrew Luck, these guys, Garoppolo, if he had more weapons, I would say he's definitely a better play. I'm not too fond of Garoppolo, even though Kansas City has been really poor, giving up a lot of yardage to quarterbacks. Until I see something from Garoppolo as far as his receivers, I just don't know. Right now, I mean, he doesn't really have anybody explosive that he can go to on a regular basis. Granted, he's pretty good, but I just don't know. I mean, so Garoppolo for me is not in play. Goff is in a tough matchup against the Chargers. I think he'll do well there, but I don't think he'd be someone that I want to pay $7,600 for. Carson Wentz coming in. Phillip Rivers could be a possible play. Same thing. Rams and Chargers game is going to be a pretty good defensive game with 2 teams that are pretty good offensively. So we're going to see whom is able to neutralize the other. Andy Dalton against Carolina. I'm not on Dalton this week. I'm not on Alex Smith this week. My next guy that I'm going to discuss is Blake Bortles. I really like Blake Bortles this week, man. He played so well last week. He's been really, really good. First week, granted, his completion percentage was horrific. But this past week, he had a great week. So far in 2018, well, let's go over his price first. He's $6,700 here. And on DK, he's $5,600. That's a pretty good price. And granted, on DK, you can also go up to Rivers at $5,800 or Matt Ryan at home at $5,700. I think those are all good plays. But I like Blake Bortles, especially on FanDuel for that price, $6,700. I think he's a fine play. His 2 games were against the Giants in New England, and he did really well against New England. But we knew New England wasn't the greatest defensively. I mean, they show signs of being a pretty decent defense, but he really, really tortured them. And this is without no Leonard Fournette. And Leonard Fournette is going to be back this week, so I definitely like Bortles even more so. But 2018 thus far, 47 of 78, 60% completion percentage, 553 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's averaging 276 yards per game. He also has rushed 10 times in 2 games, as you can see here. All right, for 77 yards. So he's willing to run. He's one of those little mobile quarterbacks. Like I said in the first time I chose him, which I think was last week or the first week of the season, I told you I like his grit. You know, he's feisty, he's willing to get dirty, and he's willing to dive in there and make things, interesting when it comes to the quarterback position as far as running and throwing. Last week, like you see, 29 of 45, 377 yards, 4 TDs, 1 interception. He rushed 6 times for 35 yards and 33.58 fantasy points. And he actually had 36.5 on DK. Okay, very good. Inside the 20, in the red zone, 4 of 8, 50%, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Inside the 10, 3 of 6, 50%, 9 yards, 3 TDs as well. So when he's been in the inside the red zone, the 3 TDs have come inside the 10 yards. He's going up against Tennessee. Tennessee pass defense is 20th in the league, 256 yards per game they've been giving up, 4 TDs, 3 interceptions. They're not that bad of a defense. Versus quarterbacks, the quarterbacks have rushed 9 times against them for 48 yards, and they have coughed up 21.2 DK points to quarterbacks this year thus far after 2 games, and 19.7 fantasy points. In the red zone, given up, their opponents have gone in there 3 times, and 2 out of the 3 times they have scored a touchdown. Tennessee is actually, to be honest with you, that's a that was misread by me. Tennessee is actually the best team within the red zone thus far this year. After 2 games, they have only given up a field goal. So they have had 3 opponents. They have had opponents go in there 3 times, and they have not surrendered a touchdown as of yet. But I mean, again, I'm not going to go only by that. I just like the way the matchup folds with Blake Bortles, and he's actually has gotten a good connection with his receivers already. And of course, if he has Leonard Fournette back, I think that's going to be also a little bit more of a problem for Tennessee, because now they got to not only got to focus on Leonard Fournette, because remember, Jacksonville, they're run oriented first, So I mean, last week, granted, he had to throw the ball a little bit against New England. And New England is vulnerable to the pass, so they did the right thing with no Leonard Fournette. They're going to throw a little bit more, but Bortles should be in a position still to be able to throw for over 200 yards and possibly 2 touchdowns against his team or better. And I believe he's able to get that done for you guys this week. So I am still in favor of Blake Bortles, and even with Leonard Fournette back in the fray of things this week. All right, my next quarterback will be my last one that I'm going to discuss for this week. Granted, these are going to be some that probably you're not going to even hear about, but I really, really like some of these guys. I also like here, for the very cheap price of $6,500, Mitch Trubisky against Arizona. We know Arizona has been horrible, so I'm going to pick on Arizona until they start picking up their game and they get better defensively. Mitch Trubisky, $6,500 here on FanDuel. He's $5,500 on DK. He's right there. So far this year, 48 of 69, 69.6% completion percent. His completion ratio is 70%, pretty much. You could just round that off. He's been throwing the football fairly well. Granted, last night he looked, he made some really boneheaded throws a few times towards the end zone that were almost picked off. Thank goodness they weren't. But he has some potential, and he looked pretty good. And then now, and what's interesting to me more is the Arizona factor. Arizona's been horrific. You got to pick on them. And he's been throwing the ball 70% completion percentage. You got to consider that. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. All right, last night, 25 of 34. Pretty nice night. 34 passes and completed 25. He had 200 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions. Rushing, 5 for 24 yards, 16.4 fantasy FanDuel fantasy points last night, and 16.4 also on DK. And again, it's just only matchup. That's the only reason why I'm considering it. Inside the red zone, 7 of 12, 58% completion percentage, 34 yards for 2 touchdowns. And inside the 10, no difference. So that means when he's been inside the 20, pretty much his touchdowns have come within the 10 yards. So it's 4 of 7, 57 yards, 57% completion percentage for 12 yards and 2 touchdowns inside the 10. You're going up against Arizona. Arizona is the 27th worst pass defense after 2 games. And those 2 games were against the Rams and Washington. And then we're going up here with Mitch Trubisky, and they got to deal with Khalil Mack on the defensive side. The defense for Chicago looks pretty decent. Makes a big difference when you have a Khalil Mack, okay? But against quarterbacks, they've given up 609 yards. Arizona, 45 of 62, 72.6% of the time they have completed their passes. Their completion percentage has been really, really good against Arizona quarterbacks, and this kid has been throwing pretty much 70%, so I expect him to be at around 70% or better. They have also given up 3 touchdowns to those quarterbacks, to the opposing quarterbacks with 1 interception. Opposing quarterbacks also have had 10 rushes for 16 yards, not a whole lot there, but DK points, total 21 DK points and 19.5 FanDuel points. They also are worse in the time of possession. Their opponents have been utilizing the clock 36.08 minutes per game, which I also found interesting. Opponents also have scored 70% of the time in the red zone. That's the 10th worst in the NFL. So, I mean, and also what I found is that they've given up a lot of first downs, 27 first downs per game in the 2 games. So they really have had their struggles. And when I look at one thing and I see one thing look positive, I always try to find another area or two as far as statistics are concerned to make my evaluation and my decision. So I think Mitchell Trubisky is a fine play at 6,500 and 5,500 on DK. Could be a nice value play at quarterback. And those are the guys that I'm looking at. Now, granted, I do like this week as well. I think Cam Newton, which I mentioned before, I think Cam is in a good spot. So you definitely could consider Cam Newton. Cam is coming in 49 of 71, 69% completion percentage thus far, 496 yards and 3 TDs. Last game, I'm going to speak about Cam because I think he has the possibilities to do well this week. The last game, 32 of 45. 335 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had 5 rushes for 42 yards, 28.6 FanDuel points, and 31.6 DK points. Going up against Cincinnati, like I mentioned before, Cincinnati has given up 23 points per game on average to the 2 teams they faced, which was Baltimore and Indianapolis. But I think that Cam can do a lot here as well. So I think he's someone to consider as a possible play. And like I said before, there's a number of others which I mentioned early on in this video, like Rodgers, Cousins. I think, again, like I said, in my opinion, I think we could pay up a little bit on quarterback this week. But as you can see, I did give you 2 guys here under 7 that are pretty good plays in Bortles as well as Mitchell Trubisky. But you also have guys like Case Keenum. You still have Dak Prescott. I think Prescott is not a bad, not so much Case Keenum here against Baltimore, because Baltimore is pretty good. I don't like Derek Carr at all. Alex Smith, Dalton, I'm out of those guys this week. But like I said, some of those guys are in play. And I will definitely touch up more if I find that there's any other value or any other possible good plays at quarterback for the week. I will definitely touch on those for sure on Saturday's live show at 7 p.m. So again, don't forget, subscribe down below, put on your post notifications, be ready for the live show. Running back video will be up shortly. And then, of course, going into tomorrow, you're going to get still the receivers and the tight ends. And the defense is coming up in the next day or 2, so be on the lookout for those videos. Again, drop a like on the video. I appreciate it. If you drop a like, it shows me that you appreciate the information I'm giving you and the possibilities of helping you guys out, of course, with some possible plays for this week's slate. So with that being said, that's pretty much it for the quarterbacks as far as the ones that I really like and I'm targeting this week. Also, you know, I forgot to mention early on, it was very important, some of the games that you should be targeting this week. And these are the games that I'm targeting. I'll mention them again on the running back video as well. The New Orleans-Atlanta game should definitely be an area that you should be targeting some players. Okay, implied total 53 total for that game. I think that's a game to look at. Definitely New England, Detroit. You definitely got to consider that one. It's not on the main slate, but it's definitely someone you want to consider. Green Bay and Washington definitely is another one I'm looking at 47.5 implied totals. I also am looking at targeting players in the San Francisco-Kansas City game with 56 implied total. The Los Angeles Chargers, Los Angeles Ram game is definitely another game that I'm targeting and having some exposure to as far as that game, 48 implied total. The Pittsburgh-Tampa Bay game, 52.5 implied total for that game definitely is another one. It's not on this main slate, but remember, it's definitely one that you should be targeting players from. Tennessee and Jacksonville, I'm considering that one. And, of course, I have mentioned that I like Mr. Deshaun Watson, so I am targeting the Houston-New York Giant game. And I think those are the 6 or 7 games that I'm targeting out of the 13 as far as possible players for my lineups. I think those are recommendations that I believe you guys should be looking at as well. So other than that, again, drop a like on the video, man. Subscribe down below. Make sure you put on your post notifications. And I'll see you guys on the next video.